Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight to speak to you a little bit about the Pathways to Employment program and how we work with our members and corporate sponsors to match everyone who's looking for employment to those opportunities. Share my screen. So, about Pathways to, about Pathways to Employment program, as I said before, we're really designed to support our members through the employment journey, whether they're starting a new career or this is their first employment opportunity. So what we provide and I provide are best practices as resume writing, interviewing skills, application process, and really being there to support as you go through that journey. Again, with our employee partners, we really work with them on how to create a more inclusive work environment, hiring practices, and bridging that gap between people with disabilities and employment opportunities and the workforce. Before I go on more into the program, a little bit about myself. I have a vocational rehab / HR experience, recruitment experience. I am also a person who uses a wheelchair. I have spina bifida. My injury level or my diagnosis is L4, L5. So I use a wheelchair as my main source of being able to get around from point A to point B. I also have a newborn, so I want to apologize if we do hear a little background noise, and that will fit well into part of the preparation and part of our discussion as well on best practices on how to prepare for these things. And I'm not sure if we did this before, but any questions, we can put them in the chat and we can address those questions or concerns during the conclusion of our presentation. So first, we're going to open with LinkedIn and why LinkedIn is very important. I believe LinkedIn is one of the most powerful professional networking tools. What it allows you to do is really connect with employers on a one-to-one basis, as well as really understand what their visions are, what the job opportunities are, and start those conversations, whether it's passively or particularly about a job opportunity. Also, you can use it as a reference and as an extension of your resume, right? Because the resume ideally is very limited in nature. It's one page, it's X amount. So there's a lot of limitations that may prevent you from really telling the whole story of your professional and personal experience, community experience. So LinkedIn can provide you with an opportunity to really market yourself more. And always, remember to keep it updated, to be on it as much as possible, and don't be afraid to reach out to recruiters. Myself, I do that personally and professionally, just to find out what the job market looks like, and that way I'm always aware of these type of things that are coming up. So definitely use LinkedIn. Also, we have our Job Path portal, which is another avenue where you can learn more about opportunities that we partner with companies on and that are invested in hiring and including people with disabilities into their workforce. So Job Path portal, which you'll see later, and I'll provide that link for you as well. So before we, so I would like to just start with remote settings, because even though COVID, and I say this very cautiously, is starting to stabilize, and we are starting to see more in-person activity and interaction, we want to make sure that we're still very much in the remote setting as we are in it today. So what we want to make sure that we are very aware of is what we can't control. As far as background noise, as I said in the beginning, I have a newborn, I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment, I work remotely. So these things are sometimes unavoidable, but what I do is maybe communicate with my wife and say, I have a webinar this evening, so let's try to, occupy the baby as much as we can so that I can successfully do this webinar, and speak with you this evening. Same thing for an interview. If your living circumstances may have certain distractions, that's something you may want to bring to the table, just so you set that precedent. As far as visual, you want to make sure that your background is as plain as possible. I do have a virtual background for my work. However, virtual backgrounds, I try my best not to have them, because we want to avoid distraction. And sometimes those virtual backgrounds tend to kind of be inconsistent and may go in and out. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Mute your devices, even if put them away out of your view, like your cell phone or anything like that. The TV is off, right? Making sure that we're not pulled away from the conversation as much as possible. Eye contact to the best of your ability is good. Don't be afraid to smile, right? I know it's very difficult when you're speaking into a camera, because we have a tendency to maybe think that we're talking to ourselves, and it's less personal, right? Less interactive. But that's why we want to make sure that we're always smiling, we're always nodding the best of our ability, and really showing attentiveness in our body language, the best to our ability, of course. As Megan and I did today, what I learned very quickly with technology is the best when you don't need it, and it's the absolute worst when you need it at the most crucial moments. So we want to make sure that we test our equipment, Wi-Fi, computer, those type of things, as much as possible, because again, avoid interruptions. So I'm the type of person where I try to set it and forget it. So maybe 15, 20 minutes before the event, maybe 10 minutes before the event or the interview, we want to make sure that we kind of set it and forget it, and make sure that we're prepared for our conversation. Business attire as much as possible. For gentlemen, although I'm not in a tie this evening, but tie, suit, etc. Right, we want to make sure that we treat this exactly as if it was an in-person conversation. Sorry for the typo there. It's supposed to say business attire, not business casual. So, going a little back about United Spinal structure, we have different departments. We have the resource center, which again, I'll provide this in a follow-up email to you or to Megan so that she can distribute it. But we have our resource center, which is a great way to learn about more of what the breadth of the reach of United Spinal can do, and how we can partner with you in different facets or different parts of your journey of your life, and what you may or may not need. We have the veterans program for those who are veterans, also a great program. and support system that we offer. Our chapter networks, being that we're speaking to chapter members here, we're well aware of those. So definitely a great way to network, and it is networking is equally as important as filling out an application. Because as the saying goes, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that networking is important in that aspect. So chapter networks. Internship opportunities, I am working on them within the Pathways to Employment program as a way to get more involved in opportunities. If you're not finding anything that you are a good match for, as far as those type of career readiness type of programs. Our advocacy department, it speaks for itself. If you want to be that voice, you want to contribute to the cause, you want to support people with disabilities, the community that we're a part of, our advocacy chapter, our advocacy department is wonderful, and what help you do that as well. Peer mentoring, I'm working very closely with them as well. What that enables you to do is really get one-on-one contact with our mentor, with an individual that may share similar life experiences that you have, whether it's employment related or non-employment related, and really guide you through your journey, whether it's employment or not. So, resumes. The reason why I feel like it's very important to review what resumes should include and what should not include is because regardless of your disability, level of disability, right? We all need a resume to start the process or to continue the process. And coming from an HR recruitment lens, I have firsthand experience on what the importance of having a solid resume looks like. So current contact information, even though it's number 3, I would say it's the most important, even though it seems minuscule, because sometimes recruiters will reach out to you, call you, text you, email you, and if you're not available on these communication, if you're not available to that communication or don't check on that communication, that could be an opportunity that you let pass, right? So we don't want to put ourselves behind the 8 ball, right? For lack of a better phrase. The 2-page, there seems to be a limitation or a number suggestion, whether it be 8 to 10 years of experience, no more than 2 pages. Yes, those are all true, and those are all good guidelines. However, if your resume extends past that 1 or 2 pages, but the experience is relevant past that 1 or 2 pages, it's important that it's on your resume, and also on your LinkedIn as a follow-up. Because if it's not on your resume, it doesn't exist. There's no way for a recruiter, for a company to know that you have this experience. So it's more important that it's on the resume, regardless of the length of the resume, as long as it's relevant to the position you're applying for. Spelling and grammar, super important. I know these things seem to be very minuscule again, but they're super important because I reviewed a few resumes in my brief experience here. I started in July this past summer, and I did see some inconsistencies as far as grammar and spelling errors. So For those of you in school, or for those, remember that the academic career, think of it as a term paper. So for every error, spelling, grammar you make, it doesn't mean that you fail the class or you're not going to be considered for that position. However, it decreases the chances that you are selected. So we want to make sure that we are making sure we're solid on that front. Quantifying bullet points, super important. What that basically means is adding metrics or numerical value to your resume. So meaning, if you worked on a team, how many people did you work with or under, or worked with or reported to, rather, excuse me. If you worked on a budget, what was the budget, the dollar amount? If you did database work or data entry work, how many numbers or entries were you able to accomplish, right? All these things, what they do is they give the reader a better insight, a more detailed insight on the volume and the volume of experience, the value we're able to handle and the level of experience you have within that job. So for example, if I had said, hosted a webinar December 1st at 6 o'clock, okay, great, that's wonderful. That means I have some experience on a webinar. But if I say hosted a webinar with 25 people, now you can understand where my level of experience or ability to communicate with people is at a higher level versus just giving you that blanket statement. So going to inappropriate email, things to exclude or to look out for, is inappropriate email. There's a difference between inappropriate and offensive. So again, my brief experience here, I do see that some people have these, how would I say, gimmick type of emails, like G Money or Hot Rod or those type of things. My first email coming out of the gate was LS Baller 86, right? Not offensive, but not appropriate. So thankfully, Google or Gmail helps us out a lot, and it gives us a more appropriate email for your name, last name, first name, last name, etc. Social media accounts, LinkedIn, if you do have one, again, should be on your resume under the demographic information. So your name, your email, your address, etc., and then your social media link. I'm sorry, your LinkedIn URL. Just a word of advice, just be aware how companies can interpret your social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and just be aware of how people may interpret your statements or your pictures, right? I will never tell you something is appropriate or not appropriate, but just be cautious of that. Demographic information should not be on your resume. It could be inferenced on your race or your age or your gender, right? Assumed, but it shouldn't be directly on there, or disability as well. One second, I'm so sorry. So sorry, 1 second. Oops. All right, switching gears back to, switching gears into an in-person interview where what you should be prepared for an in-person interview. So I'll skip to the I'll skip to the fourth. Be confident in what you're saying, simply because of what's happening right now. I would rather you pause and think about what we're saying before we say it. Because it is a first time experience, or potentially a first time experience, speaking to that individual. So we want to make sure that when we are talking to that person, we are very thorough and very, we speak with a lot of intention, right? And confidence. So it's better to take a pause, as you probably see that I've done several times, and think about what we want to say before we say it, right? Of course, we're going to be rehearsed, but I can tell you now, I've probably been on 10, 20, 30 interviews throughout my career. And without failure, there's always something that I forgot to say. That's why we do the cover letters, we do the follow-up emails, things like that. If it's an in-person interview, bring extra copies of your resume. Very important. What has happened to me before is that potential position may not have been a good match for me for whatever reason. But the interviewer knew of another position. So he or she or they had me meet with one of their colleagues or referred me to another opportunity, and I was able to capitalize on that because I was prepared with other resumes as a way to market myself. If you need accommodations, super important. Reasonable accommodations, self-disclosing is something that is a personal choice, but reasonable accommodations is super important, that you understand what you need and when you need it so that you're able to articulate that effectively. In my previous position, I used to work for a healthcare company in New York, and what the process was is once you're offered a position, I used to tell the applicants, this is the time that you articulate your reasonable accommodation. The reason why I gave them that guideline is because for that healthcare system, it took about 3 weeks for the entire pre-employment process. So that's the references, the background check, any physicals, so on and so forth. So when they requested that reasonable accommodation, that set off an entire different process with the employee health services department, where certain documentation may have been needed for the company to implement those accommodations. And it's separate from and apart from HR for various reasons. So definitely there's 2 times that reasonable accommodation can come into play. Is one, at the interview. So if it's an in-person interview, you should ask as many questions as far as the physical layout or landscape of it so that you're able to better navigate for yourself. If you are coming in with a caregiver or you're coming in with a service animal, right? It's good to be transparent and say, I'm coming in with X person or with this accommodation. That way, where everyone is aligned with each other, right? We don't want any surprises. We don't want to give the impression that we're hiding anything if it's in person. And then, of course, time of offer, as I said. So interview and time of offer are those type of times where you have to have, your reasonable accommodation request ready to be articulated. So as far as self-disclosure, again, that's a really personal decision. Myself, every interview that I've spoken or had, I did bring my disability into that conversation as a way to, as a life experience type of conversation. Not, oh, I have spina bifida, therefore you should hire me, but because of my disability, I have certain life experiences, and I gave them examples on how my life experience contributes to my professional and education background. We discussed some of this stuff already. Again, so our membership, if for those who are not members or know people that want to become a member, please encourage them. You can share my contact information with them. Our job path portal, as we said before, is a good tool to learn about employers that we partner with, as well as employment opportunities that we know that companies are invested in helping, not helping, but employing people with disabilities and including people with disabilities. Our resource center, our chapter network, peer mentoring support, very good tool, very good networking, and then advocacy. And then you can also find us on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page for those who don't know, and as well as Instagram, all good ways of finding out about how United Spinal, how active we are in the community and what we're doing exactly in the community, and as far as internal as well. And this is my contact information. My email is lstlouis@unitedspinal.org. The Pathways to Employment program. You can find that on the United Spinal website. And I really look forward to partnering with you as you pursue a successful career or transitioning into your career. And if there's any companies here or people that are looking to create a more inclusive environment within their workforce, please reach out to me and we'd be happy to partner with you as well. So at this time, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can have a conversation.